Martina so far in this first set. First serve really hasn't worked up to its usual high standard. What cost her that other serve?
Sobrang di ko pa mapaniwala. Maraming salamat sa suporta. Sana patuloy yung suporta niyo sa akin. I think for United States, especially the juniors, I think it's a great opportunity to be exposed to this level. And this
best moment, I think, was the happiest I've ever been was winning first Wimbledon.
Their 20-year-old athlete Alexandra Eala must manage a circus she did not create while getting ready for the biggest match of her life. She still needed to enter court 6 on foot. She was nevertheless required to compete. She accomplished what champions do in the face of thousands of onlookers, crushing expectations, and a debate surrounding her identity. For a brief, electrifying moment, it appeared as though she was going to transform pandemonium into victory when she went onto the court. There was an overwhelming amount of noise when Alexandra Eala entered court 6. This was not the courteous applause of a first-rate Grand Slam audience. Every nook of the small area was bursting with unadulterated, passionate national pride. Every seat was occupied. Every aisle was crowded. Even before the first point was played, fans were leaning over railings, pressing against fences, raising their phones, and yelling. Tea was more like a football derby in the midst of Melbourne Park than a game of tennis. This was both a blessing and a burden for Eala. The strain was tremendous, yet the energy was exhilarating. She was no longer merely playing for herself. She was bearing the burden of an entire nation, a dispute, and an international glare that grew hotter by the moment. Alicia Parks, a 23-year-old American with a powerful serve and explosive force, stood across the net. Ranked lower than Eala, but when her game clicked, she was deadly, unpredictable, and able to blow any opponent off the court. It was a competitive battle on paper. In actuality, it soon changed into something quite else. Eala appeared courageous from the first games. She had perfect timing and deft footwork. Park was left reeling when she took the ball early, easily changed pace, and painted the lines with ground strokes. After each winner, the crowd surged, and the sound reverberated off the nearby walls, intensifying the event to an almost unreal degree. Parks appeared shaken. Her initial attempts were unsuccessful. She lost her rhythm. She looked first at her box and then at the throng, clearly disturbed by the incessant noise. Eala performed with a clarity and intensity that suggested fate was on her side as she fed off the atmosphere. Converted breakpoint. Then, as Eala tightened her hold on the match, Parks lost game after game. The scoreboard revealed a startling tale in less than 30 minutes. There are 6 reasons to enjoy a bagel. Alexandra Eala defeated a top 100 opponent in her Australian Open main draw debut without losing a single match. The fans blew up. Flags waved erratically. Chants reverberated across the complex. This was meant to be the turning point and the solution to all scheduling questions. Evidence that she deserved to take center stage and that she belonged. However, fairy tales have never been respected in tennis. The air changed slightly as the second set started. To her credit, Alicia Parks resisted giving up. She began focusing on her abilities rather than striving for perfection. Ruthless aggression, shorter points, and larger serves. She fought where she had previously been docile. As Parks discovered her range, an additional issue surfaced. The audience broke invisible boundaries in an attempt to give Eala a boost. Not just for the wins, but also for Parks' errors, applause broke out. Serves that were missed were honored. There were roars in response to double faults. It was natural and heartfelt, but it went against the unspoken rules of tennis decorum. Parks sensed it as well. She hardened rather than shrinking. Her focus was strengthened by the jeers. She would later acknowledge that the environment was challenging but also inspiring. She began using the crowd's noise as fuel instead of attempting to quiet them. Her serve started to take center stage. Eala fell more behind the baseline as her forehand flattened out. The demonstrations changed. Eala used to dictate, but now she stood up for herself. Parks punched the air as she finished the second set, winning 6-3. It was a level match. The tension within the court was reflected in the turmoil outside. A war of attrition was the decisive set. Eala used all of her strength to fight. She pursued unattainable balls. She made brave shots to save break points. There was no denying her heart. However, the physical toll started to manifest. Park's goal was evident, her shots were heavier, and her strength was unrelenting. Parks broke serve halfway through the set. It was the necessary fissure in her armor. She didn't look back after that. The final scores were 6-0, 3-6, and 2-6. Eala's dream of winning the Australian Open came to an end in just over 90 minutes. However, that scoreline merely provides the most basic summary of what transpired. This was more than just a defeat. It was the result of a young player being forced to perform in circumstances that few veterans would envy, as well as organizational failure and emotional exhaustion. Not only was Eala lost, but she also had to undergo a spectacle that no player in the first round should ever have to deal with. Her remark, however, said a lot. She didn't become angry in her post-match interviews. She did not place the responsibility on the court, the audience, or the mayhem. She expressed gratitude to her fans. "The mood is unique," she said. Beyond her years, she accepted the setback with humility. Then she took a step that solidified her position much beyond rankings. She lingered under the intense Australian sun for almost an hour, signing autographs, taking pictures, and giving hugs to sobbing children who had been waiting all day to see her. She thanked each fan individually. Eala stood there, composed, kind, and giving, while tournament administrators fumbled behind closed doors to handle a PR catastrophe. It was hard to overlook the contrast. There was stillness and bewilderment on one side. As the dispute raged, the other demonstrated leadership. Eala moved on. Champions don't stay disappointed. She took a plane to Manila a few days later. No big remarks, no press tour, just a calm trip back home. However, it was everything but silent when she touched down. Like a warrior coming from battle, she was welcomed. The cameras flashed. Supporters applauded her nation. She was not diminished by her defeat at the Australian Open. People didn't perceive her as a failure, which made her stand out. They observed resiliency. The Philippine Women's Open, a historic WTA 125 event that ushered in a new era for tennis in the nation, was waiting for her. This wasn't your typical competition. Being the first event of its kind to be staged on Philippine land, it was a statement. In record speed, all of the tickets were sold out. There was an increase in media coverage. Furthermore, it was obvious who the tournament's face was. Eala wasn't merely added to the drawing. She was the focal point and the draw. The reason why young children took up rackets and had bigger dreams. Expectations were really high as I was seated second. This was meant to be the point of redemption. An opportunity to burn frustration. However, the tennis gods weren't done penning this tale. Jaws fell once more upon the announcement of the first-round draw. Eala's opening. A racist scandal is sparked by an open nightmare, and the tennis world is rocked by a 24-hour ultimatum. Welcome back to Champions Tennis. This is the only place where we do more than just cover tennis. We pull back the curtain to reveal the turmoil, the controversy, and the unsettling realities that the mainstream would want to overlook. It's not simply another match recap, so if you're new here, fasten your seatbelt. It's a tale about perception, power, and a young celebrity thrust into the spotlight. You already know how we do it if you're a returning champion. Just the reality as it happens, without any filters or fear. Today, we're delving deeply into a story that has left tournament administrators searching for answers, fans enraged, and legends incensed. At the heart of it all is Eala, whose name can be heard on sports talk shows and social media timelines all over the world. Additionally, the question is straightforward yet explosive, and it is being asked more and more frequently. What caused this to occur? More significantly, why do players like her continue to experience this? Although this story starts in Melbourne, its origins go well beyond a single competition or court. One of the most talked about young players in the sport going into the Australian Open was Eala. At just 20 years old, she was ranked 49th in the world. She wasn't some unknown qualifier trying to pass unnoticed. She was a WTA champion, a proven talent, a junior Grand Slam champion, and a cultural icon for millions of tennis fans throughout Southeast Asia. She is more than just an athlete in the Philippines alone. She serves as a reminder that tennis brilliance is not limited to North America, Europe, or Australia. Her ascent has been exponential. Crowds, cameras, and expectations followed that ascent. Enormous crowds. Everyone was aware of it, everyone, with the apparent exception of the scheduling team for the Australian Open. Jaws fell to the ground when the main draw schedule was revealed. Rod Laver Arena did not host Eala's first-round match. Margaret Court Arena wasn't the location. It wasn't even on one of the bigger outdoor courts meant to accommodate heavy foot traffic. Instead, Court 6 was given her match. Court 6 is a fancy practice court for people who have never visited Melbourne Park. There is little infrastructure for crowd management, restricted access, and cramped seats. It's not the kind of court used for a player with millions of fans, but rather for low-key, early-round games. Online outrage broke out in a matter of minutes. The same question was posed by tennis analysts, Filipino fans, and even impartial observers. How could a tournament of this caliber make such an obvious error in judgment? Chaos was the solution. Hours before the first ball was struck on game day, Melbourne Park was filled with spectators. Not in waves, not in hundreds, not in dozens. Thousands of Filipino admirers appeared, singing her name while wearing flags and having their faces painted. Few had traveled across Australia by car. Others had arrived via plane from abroad. They weren't just there. Their purpose was to observe history. But inadequate preparation collided with history. Court 6 was nearly immediately filled. The strain of human demand caused security barriers to collapse. Fans begged, pleaded, and argued for admission as lines wound across the grounds indefinitely. The sound reverberated throughout the complex. "Alex is what we want." Players warming up on adjoining courts were distracted by chances loud cut through the air. What ought to have been a joyous occasion became a nightmare for safety. The security personnel were overburdened. Additional staff members were called in. The police were notified. A scheduling decision turned into a major logistical disaster. Additionally, when pictures and videos proliferated on social media, a different story started to emerge. Fans weren't merely furious. They were dubious. Because there was more than one court involved. The discussion abruptly changed from incompetence to intent as people began comparing schedules, lower-ranked players on larger stages, and lesser-known stars given prime positions. The term, disrespect, became popular. The phrase, tennis hates more than any other, then appeared. Racism. Was this just another instance of athletes from non-traditional tennis nations being ignored by the sport? Because Eala didn't fit the well-known stereotype of what a star should look like or where she should come from, was she being treated as an afterthought? One voice broke through the din like a bolt of lightning as the argument raged. Martina Navratilova is an 18-time Grand Slam champion, a trailblazer, and a woman whose career has been characterized by confronting injustice. Numerous reports that have been making the rounds in tennis media claim that Navratilova did not remain silent. She allegedly asked the question that others were too hesitant to ask in public, bluntly criticizing the event organizers. Why is there racism? Like a bomb, those three words exploded. The sport pays attention when someone of Navratilova's caliber says, "Chasing controversy is not the foundation of her legacy. It is based on history, credibility, and opposing exclusionary and marginalizing regimes." Her alleged remarks caused the issue to go from controversy to crisis right away.